Kinesiology 223. We're still in chapter 21. This is number 4 out of 5 for presentations. We're talking sports deterrence model for drug abuse and also prevention and control. And I have to tell you, when you start talking about substance abuse and talking with your athletes, etc., I would state that what they're presenting in the book is a very overly simplified model, and perhaps maybe overly simplified is the best way to go. But I would say for some individuals, as I mentioned earlier, when you talk about the legal aspects, the moral aspects, and also the health aspects, these are individuals that could probably care less about any one of those three domains. And in some regard, you can't really have a logical conversation with those individuals about those bullet points because they'll be very dismissive about it and could care less. So in a way, the book tries to equate a rational cost versus the benefits when a person decides to use a drug. And I will tell you, when you're talking with that individual, having talked with individuals like that, when you talk with individuals like that, to them, the benefits through the prism, meaning the lens through which they're looking, the benefits far, absolutely far outweigh the costs of taking any kind of performance enhancing drug. So the book notes that it comes down to three major components: the cost of a decision to use, the benefits associated with using a drug, and the specific situational factors that may in some way affect the cost benefit analysis of actually using the drug. Okay. But I'm going to tell you, you're talking with people who are probably not thinking rationally about this and thinking about how their body will be 10 years down the road, 15, 20 years down the road. They're thinking about being in the moment and winning. So the costs: you could have fines, suspensions, jail time, right? You could have disapproval and criticism by others, your teammates, etc. A person can feel guilty or have reduced self-esteem about taking these drugs. And you could also have health concerns. That'll be the negative side effects from taking the medication or whatever performance enhancing drug you're taking. So after receiving a ban based on positive doping, and they found the cost to be very high. So meaning that in that regard, the cost of doping was in some regards greater than the actual benefit of the performance enhancing drug. And they just couldn't compete. And what they found is that athletes dealt with severe psychological and social issues, including the following, as a result of being ostracized from their sport. They found that these individuals, were let me go here. Let me move myself out of the way. They found that they were, not able to compete. And in some regards, like if you're competing in like track and field events in Europe, that's going to cost you money because you get paid to go to these events and you pay to place, or you get paid based on your placement. You have psychological worry due to shame, lack of social support from family and teammates. You're not around your social structure anymore, so you've lost your self of identity. You've lost, your team identity as well. And those individuals ended up experiencing depression and stress. And then also, excuse me, perhaps if they're part of a national organization, they wouldn't have the national support that they once did, or the financial support from that national organization. So if we just take this into the next slide, and what I did is I encapsulated some of the stuff that was after this, and I just put it here just so you know. The most consistent deterrent in this process is self-imposed sanctions. So when the action of taking drugs goes against one moral value, the least effective deterrent is legal sanctions. And I would say maybe, and here's why. If you ask a person who is operating from an irrational place and they're very outcome oriented and all they want to do is win the Olympics, they will not have the same self-imposed sanctions and have the same moral barometer as somebody else who states they want to compete and they want to compete fairly. They won't have the same moral and ethical drivers in place. So I would say the most consistent deterrent of self-imposed sanctions would be for individuals who adhere to having high moral integrity and also have high moral values. For others who do not, it doesn't matter. It literally does not matter to them. I would think for both, though, the least effective is legal sanctions. They could care less about that. The use of drug testing as a deterrent at the high school level was investigated in a study, and the results didn't reveal evidence that drug testing was a deterrent. So probably at that age, most of the students are saying, well, I could just find a way around the actual test itself. I can do something to my sample and I'll be fine. They won't test. So you have athletes who will state that they inadvertently, you know, took a drug and they didn't know that it was on some list. What I will tell you is that sport organizations are really good at informing the coaches and the athletes on a regular basis what is banned and what is not. So if you do a control click in this presentation, not in this video, but in the presentation, that control click will take you out to the USA track and field page, and they have quite literally the most updated list you can have for drugs that are not allowed. And that's usually based upon WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency updated list. So you can go out to that one as well if you want to do a control click. So for somebody to say that, well, I took a medication, I didn't know it contained a banned substance, they can literally take that medication, go to WADA, and see if it's on the list or not. So when an athlete says, I didn't know, I just kind of put my hands up and shake my head because it's nonsense. It's easy to find out. It's just your own laziness for not finding out. Or you didn't care to find out because you don't have the moral integrity to do so, as per my previous slide. Contaminated dietary supplements, highly unlikely. Though not FDA regulated, those supplements themselves, they cater to an athletic population, and that athletic population, they know that athletic population has to adhere to different rules of anti-doping, and so they wouldn't put them in their foodstuffs anyways. And contaminated food, I highly disagree with that too. So I find that these inadvertent doping, this inadvertent doping part within the book itself is a little bit useless, but it has its place because you do have athletes that still believe that they have inadvertently doped, and I just don't agree with that. I think even if you don't know for sure, you can still have the resources to go out to double check to make sure that you're taking a medication, perhaps that might be ephedra based because you have a sinus infection. Is that on a list or not? Can you do a pseudoephedra instead? Right? It's real easy to figure out. So in 531, the book starts to outline 9 different suggestions to help a coach better understand the process. I'm going to click and load these in here, but I would offer that you probably want to go to page 531 and take a few moments to go over these. And when you get into these, they're pretty logical when it comes down to it. But with that, prevention and control itself, it comes from the coach, it comes from the environment, and it comes from creating a culture on the team. And you have to have this kind of holistic approach between you, the coach, you, the athletic trainer, the athletic department itself. And even within the context of maybe you're in a youth sport or high school sport, you're talking about the parents as well. In college, it's a little bit to a lesser degree, but I think, across the board, you have to have the constant drip campaign, the message stating, we don't do these drugs. We're not involved in this. This is not what we believe in. This is not who we are. This is who we are, and it is quite literally the coach who has the most contact and credibility with the athletes. And therefore, it is the coach who has the greatest ability to intervene in that process with the athletes. So I would say, when you're talking about clean athletes, meaning athletes who don't take performance enhancing drugs, you have coaches who either inhibit that or limit that process, or they propagate the clean athlete mindset. And again, it comes down to you, the coach, but I would say if you're talking about an entire athletic department, you need to be on the same page and deliver the same message to your athletes, whether it's the athletic trainer, the athletic director, or the coach. that coaches football or basketball or baseball, whatever it is. You have to have the same message regarding the integrity of the program and the moral and ethical component of your program, to not be a program that's known for doping. All right, moving on to the next presentation. Thanks.